Welcome to Chris Parkin Shooting Sports. Right, you've probably seen the little unboxing video I did and first impressions on the FX True Ballistic Chronograph. Well, here it is. I've been using it for a week or so now and I'm here to report back on exactly what I've found. Now, I'll leave a link to the item in the description below so you can click on that for any detailed features you want from the manufacturer. I'm all about giving you my opinion of what's going on. So here are my findings. Right, number one, charging it up with the supplied USB-C lead, no problem at all. I've had this in use for a week and a bit and I haven't recharged it yet, other than the fact I did a precautionary recharge because it doesn't seem to give me any battery issue problems. There is an auto off on the battery, but essentially turn it on, press the main button here, then it'll just tell you tap power button to activate, and that's all do, tap power button, that activates it. Now if you use it on this stand, which is part of the mechanism that stores it as well, it works very well. But first little caveat I'll tell you about, if you're shooting off a bench pointing at your target, this wants to point at the target. Now that's as well as left and right position, it also needs to point uphill and downhill correctly, so it's actually pointing directly at the target. Now if you're on a bench it's not a problem because the benches are usually flat level. If you're on the floor prone, you don't really notice where the floor exactly is feeling, but you do sometimes need to just pack that up a little bit just to make sure it's aiming up or downhill correctly. Now of course if you put it on a tripod, that doesn't matter because the tripod you can set up to do that, and this little hole on the top here, which is designed for you to spy through so you can look directly at the target, is a very valuable accessory. But let's talk about some other factors. Now initially I used it with a centerfire. I put it about, I don't know, 30 centimeters from the barrel on the bench just to give me some space to move. It was a 308, no problems whatsoever. There's plenty of signature coming back off that bullet from the Doppler radar on the front here. I then used it on a 2.2 rimfire, but this time I did bring it in to the 20 centimeters it recommends distance between chronograph and barrel. That worked just fine. I got all my subsonic reading values and given BCs, everything like that, everything it says it will do. Now when I used it with a sub 12 foot-pound air rifle, that was when I first started to need to set up with a little bit more care and caution, and you'll see from the photograph I'll put on screen now, I put it with the barrel right next to the chronograph, so essentially we've only got about 10 or 12 centimeters of displacement on that. So that then worked fine. Again, for a 177 sub 12 foot-pound air rifle, I got my velocity readouts, no problem. I got ballistic coefficient readouts, not a problem. I'm going to go through the whole menu structure of it now so you can see a little bit more of what goes on the main screen. So if I zoom in here now, you can see this on the main screen. That is giving me the readout that I literally last measured. So if I go through the functions on this, I'm just going to go into configuration to start with. So velocity range, 400 to 4,000 feet per second. That's going to handle most air rifles and centerfires. There's a possibility with firmware updates in the future this may change. They may give you some different other options, but for now that's what it does and it works perfectly. Just select that. So we've got simple up and down keys, although in some modes the up and down keys are actually the opposite way around, but you'll see that in a minute. Now primary unit is on the immediate display. We can have that in feet per second, meters per second, joules or foot-pounds. So you've got two speed readings, two energy readings. I generally go feet per second for my primary, and I will also use foot-pounds in my secondary, which you'll see shortly. So if we go secondary unit there, we can then set it up like that, and I've got it set up in foot-pounds. So I get an immediate response. That does rely on an extra thing we're going to talk about in a second, because in your weight unit you need to set it up in either grams or grains. Mine's set up in grains. Just looking at the distance unit, that is whether you want it set up in metric or imperial. That's more to do with your later on ballistic solutions that it's going to give you. But if we just select that and go back, next screen down, distance 1, distance 2, distance 3, distance 4. Now these distances are randomly set up with it when it comes, so you've got intermediates between 1 and 100 yards, which is 91 meters. But you can actually set these secondary readings to give you distances all the way out to 300 meters. So if I just scroll down there, it goes again in the loop. 300 meters is the maximum distance at which that Doppler radar will still pick up your bullet and give you return signals. Now the further you can space these four digital readouts for speed measurement, the better and more accurately it will give you your BC. All mine have been so far just fairly simple ones, just done out to 100 meters on my general usual test range. But if I go into these, look at distance 2 for example is set up at 46 meters, distance 3 is set up at 69 meters, and it will space these out for you. This is something you can look at in more detail when you get further into using the chronograph, but initially it will work straight out of the box. Now if you want muzzle energy, you do need to enter your projectile weight. Here's one of the flip sides, that actually this goes up and down with the up and down keys the opposite way, up or down, but it doesn't matter because you just hold it down, it'll scroll through to the weight. So I'm pushing the up key and it's going down in bullet weight now, and if I press the down key it goes up in bullet weight. Not sure why they've programmed it that way around, it's just the way it is. The last bullet I was using was 143 grain Hornady ELD-X out of a 6.5 Creedmoor yesterday. I'll leave it at that for now. Now bear in mind, if you forget to set that, it will sometimes give you very odd energy readings. So for example, if you've got a 700 foot per second air rifle and you've left it on 143 grains, it'll look very odd. And similarly, so do remember, if you want your muzzle energies, do remember to put that in correctly, but it doesn't affect the actual speed reading, which I know is predominantly of interest to most shooters. Scroll down again, next screen. So the barrel offset, this is the distance between the barrel and the chronograph as it's set up like this here. So if we look at that now, 0 to 20 centimeters is the best. If you've got a barrel set up pointing straight and your chronograph's over here, it's technically pointing slightly at an angle, so it needs to compensate for that, and that's why it wants to know how far it is away from your barrel. It's not something you've got to worry about to the ends of the earth, and frankly you want it as close as possible, keep the barrel as close as possible. One thing I will say is that a viewer got in touch with me and said he's having a lot of problems getting his set up. One of his problems is he's got a muzzle brake on the rifle, and the muzzle brake on his rifle, in my opinion, I don't use muzzle brakes very much, but I think really that is causing an enormous disturbance and basically blasting the chronograph around, which is causing him some of his problems. But it's well worth noting you can play all about with positions on this. You can bring it further back from the muzzle, you can actually put it forward of the muzzle if you want. Obviously don't put it in front of the muzzle because you will shoot it. This guy's actually tried it above. He did get some success with that, but I don't think it's optimum, to be honest, because it's better next to it where actually FX tell you to put it. The barrel offset is best at 0 to 20 centimeters. It's worst at 30 to 50 centimeters, which is when it's out there to the side. And then you've got sort of middle ground, 30 to 40 centimeters. But I'm going to leave this on 0 to 20 because that's where I'm getting it to work best. Now, like I say, if you've got muzzle brakes on, you may have some other issues with it actually the blast off the muzzle brake rocking the chronograph and disturbing it. Looking at the other things here now, the channel. Now, channel is to do with using the chronograph on a range where you've got several other people using a similar FX chronograph. Essentially, channel allows you, just like on a TV, change the station, because if the guy down there on target 1 is using channel X, you can use channel Y just over here, and it just means you won't suffer from any interference from his signals with your own. Similarly, if you've got other people using them as well. It's actually, most people I think generally tend to use these things on their own anyway, but you know, some large range complexes you've got a lot of parallel ranges and there will be several people using them possibly. I'll just leave that as it is. I haven't found it has any effect on the readings for me personally. It's purely there if you've got interference from other chronographs. So if I just click select on that, that will just move my select there. Shutdown time is perhaps fairly obvious. This is basically the auto off timer. I'm going to leave this at the maximum. I'm going to leave it at 600 seconds, which is 10 minutes. Again, this goes up and down the opposite way, but I'll just click that, save that, so I've now got a 600 second lag time before it'll automatically turn off. I'm just going to save that, but I'm just going to go back into it again. Drag model, select drag model. This is actually asking you whether you want to do G1 or G7 ballistic coefficients. Again, I'll go back to the thing I said earlier. If you want to accurately measure ballistic coefficients, use your range spacings as far as possible. Most manufacturers are measuring them at least 300 meters, perhaps even further beyond. G1 is fine for just good old-fashioned round nose or pointed hunting bullets. G7 is preferable for anything with a boat tail or a secant ogive, you know, the long, thin, high BC bullets. GC just works a little bit better with the more modern calculators. But I'm just going to leave it on G1 for now because I'm generally doing hunting ammunition with my reviews. Click on that, go back. Bluetooth, switch Bluetooth on or off. This will actually pair up with your mobile phone, and you can have it do that and it will give you the display and readout on your mobile phone. That does also give you more options for recording your shot strings and sending them on either an email or something like that to yourself, or saving them onto your phone. I have tended to just leave the video camera running on screen. Please be aware that some of the video camera of the screen does show interference, but that's just due to the frequency of the camera in daylight. You don't get any flickering on the screen when you're using it, viewing it with your eyes. But Bluetooth gives you some more options. I personally try not to use it if possible, because I just don't like the fact that everything in the world seems to be relying on a mobile phone, and once you've got 3 or 4 items running, your mobile phone's as busy as you are. So that's that. So we can turn Bluetooth on, turn Bluetooth off. It's up to you depending on whether you want to use that or not. Last factors, we've got interference. This allows you to compensate for, you've got the indicators on or off if it's compensating for any kind of return signals or problematic things you've got destroying your readings. But essentially, if you are on a range without huge reflecting surfaces and things like that, or other electromagnetic interference, you're not really going to have as much problem. This ties in a little bit with just setting it up for the best usage, because if you think about that, that radar, it's like an ice cream cone. It's pointing out into the distance, and effectively you want the tip of the cone as near to your gun as possible, because out into the distance, both vertically and laterally, your bullet is obviously going up and down through its ballistic arc, and it may just be moving off slightly due to the wind. And of course, aiming through that, although you know quite precise, is not as precise as the sight on your rifle, for example. I didn't have a problem setting it up, but we'll go with that a little bit more in a minute. I'm just going to leave that off for the moment because I'm not having any problems with other signals. Exit without saving. That just basically takes me back to the main menu. If you do change variables, it's best to click save. But essentially, once it's running, that's it. Now, if we go through the screens that it gives us with the display, I generally leave it on screen 1, because screen 1 is giving me feet per second, it's giving me the bullet speed, and it's giving me the speeds at 23, 46, 68 and 300 meters. If you click into the second screen, it's giving you the speed readout at those distances. It's also giving you the energy readout at those distances. Again, make sure you put your bullet weight in correctly for it to calculate this second column. The third screen is perhaps the most usable. And these, of course, do update real time, but this will tell you your shot string. Now, using it in here now has just sort of upset it slightly because I've got lights and all sorts of things going on in here. But in your final screen, you'll get a readout, something similar to this. So I've had 5 shots. My low is 1,084 feet per second. And my high is 1,340 feet per second. I'm not quite sure what's recorded these from because I'm not doing anything on it at the moment, but there we go. And my average speed is at 1,218 feet per second. If you look at the pictures I've taken with my camera of actually these results in use, they are accurate, but in here it's picking up interference from something, lights, cameras, whichever. So standard deviation is 32.35 feet per second. I actually did do some stuff with a 308 shooting 175 grain bullets that gave me an extreme spread of about 2 or 3 feet per second over 5 shots, which is very pleasing. BC is G1, that's your calculated BC. It'll give you a figure for that there, and then your average BC averages that over several bullets. Now, although we think bullets are the most super precision, accurately, repeatably made things, they do actually vary very slightly due to the exact shape of the bullet and things like how the bullet seating in the case can affect it and score the back end of the bullet, how rifling affects it, things like that. So the average BC and the BC it calculates for each shot will not be far apart, but it's best to work just off the average BC anyway. And again, the longer the ranges you've got those 4 measurers at, the better and more accurate your BCs will be. Subsonic at the bottom tells you the distance that this calculates your bullet will go subsonic out. So for example, I've been using 168, 175 grain Match Kings out with 308. They're calculated to go subsonic to about 800 or 900 meters. Doesn't really matter, it's not something I'm going to be worried too much about, but because on extreme cases with precision long range rifles, these are very interesting facts you will specifically want to know, because you don't want to be going, you certainly don't want to be going subsonic, but you definitely don't want to be going transsonic either. Again, if you look at the pictures that came up from the rimfire, which was shooting subsonic ammunition, or the air rifle, which was subsonic, that will be subsonic at 0 because it's never gone supersonic. Essentially, I'm very, very happy with it. It works really well. The only times I've had problems with it are when I have had either some kind of reflection. So for example, I was shooting out of a building, I was shooting out of a shooting shelter, and there was quite a lot of metal sheeting around the firing point, and I did get a little bit of reflection from that. As soon as I adjusted this, I just sort of lifted it up slightly. I put the base basically slightly up on a box. I'll just fasten that back together and show you. This was shooting from a bench in that building, by the way. Essentially, all I had to do was put that slightly higher because there was like a little rail in front which was reflecting some of the radar and giving it some cause for interference. As soon as I sorted that, consistent readings, not a problem at all. Again, similarly, if you don't tip it forward or backward and get the alignment vertically as good correct as the alignment laterally, you won't get accurate readings. Grass and things blowing around in front of it, you know, immediately, that did cause a few errors too. But once I'd eradicated these known errors from each time I set it up, because I learned about using it, I didn't get any. And as soon as I watched that screen, first shot goes down, bang, screen goes black, it comes back on with all the data you need. As soon as I'd had that first reading, I was quite confident it was working. And as long as there wasn't any issue with nudging it or bashing it out of the way or a muzzle brake knocking it over, it worked superbly well. I genuinely, I immediately said when I got this, I hope to be hanging on to it long term because I think it's going to be very useful for my review projects. I'm absolutely sure of that now because it is beautifully simple in use, it's reliable, and I just like the fact it's so compact, and it's quite a tough case as well because this is not sort of a glassy polymer. I won't say it's rubbery, but it's certainly quite tough, and this slots back in literally that easily, clicks in there, it won't fall out. You've just got to clip that there and that will lift out if you need it to, and it stays all nice and secure in this case. I tend to put the radar sensor down in there so it's not going to get damaged. Put the cable back in and fasten that up. That can now just live in my shooting range bag, and it really is as simple as that. Just briefly looking at the instruction manual, I love the fact FX have sent a proper instruction manual with this. It's nice, neatly printed, it's clear, white background, black text, very easy to read. The instructions are extremely clear and easy to work through. It tells you everything you need to know about this. There is also an electronic copy of this in PDF on FX's website, as well as an instruction manual if you do want to upload the firmware. I haven't done any firmware updates yet because I haven't found the requirement to do that, but I'm sure over the life of the product FX will use firmware updates to possibly increase features, functionality and improve accuracy. Well, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, click the notification bell and go through to the end of the video, and please visit some of the show sponsors, both the British Shooting Show and Military First. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.